Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Doug, Sideshow Sucks, and you're watching Pedro's interviews.
Hey guys, this is Pedro Romero, and I'm back with a brand new video for the YouTube channel. For this occasion, I'm going to be talking to Pedro, otherwise known as Governor of Talon Esports before the start of the 2024 VCT season. On top of being one of the latest signings to that Talon roster for the 2024 season, he was also a member of Turtle Troop, which competed as one of the few, if not only, unsigned teams within the NA Challengers League. That said, we're going to be talking to him about a few interesting topics, such as how he looks back at this past season with Turtle Troop, his eventual signing with Talon, his past teams before Turtle Troop / Turtle Squad, and all of that jazz, and how he views the future, such as, competing against the rest of APAC / Pacific in the Pacific League. And also, as a further point, for those of you that aren't familiar with my line of work as a journalist within the esports space, I actually interviewed Governor at the start of this year, back in January, after he and Turtle Troop, which was then known as Squirtle Squad, qualified to NA Challengers in the first place. And so they could say this is a somewhat of a full circle moment for both me and him, so to speak. And with that said, please enjoy the video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.
Going a little bit back on to preparing for next season and the off season, how you went about your business. I just want to start off there. Off season with you switching teams and going from Turtle Troop to Talon Esports. How have you been managing this sort of aspect for you in particular at this moment in time?
So during the off season, I had a lot of time to kind of decide what I want to do after Turtle Troop because, like, the off season, right, was pretty long for challengers. I think it was like, the off season's still going on for challengers. The season didn't start for like 2 months still, so I had to really decide if I, want to really stay in challengers still for like another potentially year of just being unpaid, right? But I had some offers to trial in APAC. I had, Talon specifically, and then 2 others. But I had talked to my team. We basically all agreed that we wouldn't take any other offers unless they were tier 1. This obviously was tier 1, so I kind of, just I think we all promised each other that if it was tier 1, we would take the chance. So I took the chance, and I don't really regret it. But I do miss my friends for sure.
For no doubt, because anyone I would assume would jump at the chance to joining tier 1 and actually playing in VCT if the circumstances line right for that individual. And the same is no different for you in particular. But even so, like, when I looked at the reports and the rumors of Talon looking at you as a potential like player for their lineup, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of surprised me because like it didn't really cross into my mind, and also the same can be said for like many other fans that Talon would be looking at you. Maybe there'd be other people that would be more suitable for them. Um, and so when Talon approached you, Governor, were you surprised that you were into consideration?
Not really, to be honest. I think people underestimate like how good the tier 2 scene is in NA right now. I think a lot of people in NA, and there's still a lot of them, that still like can compete. I think NA is, from my experience right now, is very far ahead in terms of skill and just talent there. So I'm actually not surprised. Maybe when I got the first offer, I was like excited and stuff, but because I had 2 other ones, right? But at that point, I was like, okay, like, like I deserve this, like I worked hard, and there's don't get me, like, I think this should really just be like, kind of a wake up call to people that, like, tier 2 is not, tier 2 to NA is not like something to be like looked over. I think there's, again, tons of people still. I think everybody on Turtle Troop still are good enough to play, like tier 1, at least in the APAC scene, for sure. But it wasn't a surprise to me, though.
And if you're able to share, like, what other teams were interested in you, because you said you had two other teams that were offering you a chance to be within their teams. If you're able to share, if not, then I understand. But what were those other two teams?
I had and this was like a meme on Twitter, like a rumor on Twitter for a while. I had a RRQ. I didn't actually end up trialing with them, but they did reach out to me around the same time Talon did. I think it was before Talon did actually officially RRQ reached out to me first. I sent them VODs. I think it just ultimately didn't work out. I think they just found a player they liked instead. But my talks with them went pretty well, so I was surprised that it didn't progress more. But I think they just found someone they liked right away. They didn't want to waste time with trials, which I understand. People, they want to get a head start on the season. But I had Genji as well, but that one fell through because funny story. So Genji's comms are all in Korean.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually under the impression that I am like completely fluent in Korean and it wouldn't be an issue. And I was under the impression that they like would speak like Konglish, Korean and English, and it would be like okay, because if it's Konglish, I understand. And the reason I thought that was because what do you call it? I know that T1 comms, they operated in Korean and English. I know that because of Ban. And so I thought Genji would be similar, but apparently their comms are like all Korean. So like a week before my trial in Korea, I was like, "Yo, never mind. Like, I'm just gonna take Talon." But yeah, it was funny. I think Munchkin DM'd Ban and was like, "Yo, this guy can speak like fluent Korean, right?" And then he was like, "No," and then he was like, "What the hell?" And they thought I was like scamming them, but I genuinely thought it would have been okay. I thought it would have been Korean and English, but good thing I did not take that trial. Hopefully, yeah, I'm gonna be in Korea for the next couple of years, so hopefully my Korean does get good enough to where I can play for those teams and those opportunities open up for me. But right now, I'm not ready to play on a full Korean team, at least communication wise.
Well, why not just go ahead and just why didn't you just try it out with Genji, just to see how it is? Because like I'm sure looking back at the history of the game and other titles, there are occasions in which there's a communication issue,
Mhm.
verbally, but if the certain playstyles align within the players and they can find the right synergy, then I mean that may not be that big of an issue after all. So why didn't you like at
There,
least
there, there,
go
were,
at it?
there was like reasons, yeah. So mainly is like I didn't think it was obviously like it's going to take every opportunity, but with all the combination of problems with it, like one, my language barrier, kind of like I wouldn't be fully there. Two, I would have been trialing for I think Viper KO or stuff like that, which obviously aren't my strong suits. If I were to trial with a team, it would have to be like duelist or like flash initiator.
Mm.
Um, but also another big reason was I was already like a month into like Talon at that point. Like I was trialing with them for about a month at that point, and I was doing well. I liked it. I think I basically already like kind of mentally had the decision in my head like yeah I'm gonna probably take this, and I just didn't want to go through the trouble of like trialing with Gen G, and then like maybe that might fuck me over with Talon. Sorry for swearing. I don't know if that's care, but
That's all good.
um yeah. So yeah, I just didn't want to, I at that point I was like, yeah, with all this going on, I'm just gonna, take Talon.
And I'm curious as to like what the timeline was like, because you mentioned earlier on in the conversation that a talent approached you shortly after, or sometime after the season ended with you and Turtle Troop. So what was that timeline like? Spread it out, because like did
Mm,
this come together like in few months? Like, because you did mention that you were trialing, and it took a little bit of a month for this whole move to materialize and become concrete. And so what was that timeline like, if you can share?
I think after we won relegation, we immediately took like a 1 month break because we just played a full season of challengers. We wanted to take a break. That season doesn't start for another like 6 months anyway. So after a month, we started scrimming again in preparation for the night. It's like the Knights. It was the Knights tournament, the 15K in Pittsburgh. It was the first off-season event, I think. And we scrimmed in preparation for that. I think it was right after. It was during or right after that I got the the inquiries from Talon and RRQ.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah.
Yeah, the Knights Forge tournament, right, in September. Yeah.
Yeah, and us losing that was a big what do you call it? Kind of driving factor for why, I was like, it's risky, like obviously it's an off-season event, but like maybe if we had won that more like effortlessly, I would have maybe not made the decision, but like although it is an off-season event and we were kind of a little bit rusty before going in, it kind of just proved to me that it's risky. I already did a full year of challengers, right? And we're the only unpaid team, and at a certain point, it's like, I told myself, like it's for passion, but like, and that's fine. It is, right? Like I play this game for passion, right? At the end of the day, but a full year of not being paid is kind of like come on, man. You know what I mean? Like, and I worked probably the hardest I ever worked in that year, and to not be, to not receive anything for that, it was like I deserve to, right, in my head. So like I need to, take any chance I get at this point. So, I don't regret it. Although I do, still really do miss my team, and like, I wish the best for them, but yeah, like it's esports. You gotta take what you can get.
Of course, I mean, when the opportunity arises for you to, or for anyone to aka get that bag, then go ahead, do you
Yeah.
and I'm sure your teammates and everyone else understood, why you went ahead and go to Talon. And it's or sort of you brought up also about the fact that you were competing this year as an unsigned team. Frankly, the only unsigned team within North America in the tier 2 level, because we've seen a few other teams qualify as an unsigned team, but then later on, as the season transpired, they were picked up by orgs. I think one of the biggest examples is OR, and then Mad Lions, and Moist Moguls, and stuff like that. And in looking at that, it sort of does emphasize the difficulty that your team in particular experienced, because you've had a few occasions in which it looked as if an org was going to sign you guys, but
Yeah.
unfortunately that didn't become the case. And I do remember that before you qualified for challengers with Total Trip, you were doing a little bit of content on the side, and you did put in a little bit of content during the season, but only like during windows in which you're able to do that. But I'm pretty I can only assume that you basically spent this entire past year just grinding and just competing, right? You didn't really have time to focus on anything else content wise and anything else like that. Just competing, right?
Yeah, I stopped uploading on YouTube. The most I would do is stream. I think I had a few months where I streamed maybe, less than 50 hours, like a lot of the time. I would stream here and there, but that's because like it's my only source of income at that time. So it's like I kind of have to. I would kind of force myself, but ultimately, like, yeah, my focuses were definitely on competing.
And I can like I said, I can only imagine what it was like for one to play as an unsigned team. But exactly how difficult, like what was the most difficult part of trying to go through the year like that?
Yeah. So for me, financially, it wasn't that big of an issue because I, had made, some money previously, like like being on Complexity, being a streamer, YouTube. So I lived alone, not alone. I lived with my parents, so I had a lot of money saved. So it wasn't really an issue for me financially. The biggest challenge was, we have Add3r, who's, doesn't have that luxury. He has to work a job. Like this guy would practice, then he has work, and then he gets 5 hours of sleep, wakes up, has to play a little bit of ranked, practice, then work. Like he's busting his ass. So it's kind of hard. when you have a player who can't play at their fullest because of work, outside things in life. Though the biggest challenge for sure is the fact that when you're not signed, you're very open to poaching. And I think 5 times in the season, that's exactly what we had. We had TiGG and mummAy, who got poached like right after our first split. Like we like had signs of life after that split. I think we made the change to Harmful Okeanos, so we lost the first 2 games. But right after we made that change, it was like night and day. And, we beat Moist Moguls, and then we beat TSM. I don't even remember. We beat someone else, but and then we barely missed out on qualifying. And then they got poached, and then we had to rebuild again. And then we're going into next split, playing versus M80 first game, and we have a week of practice with dazzLe and Rossy. And it's like people like. One, it's a motivation thing. Like when you're being paid, it's obviously like you can put your full effort into it and work harder. And you also have an analyst, a coach, people that do all that stuff. But when you're unsigned, there's uncertainties. People get offers. People are more prone to just feel like quitting because you're not even being paid. So it's like right. But there's mainly those challenges. Like it was complete our resilience was impressive. Looking back, we're being a free agent team that whole time, but I actually think if we had an org, we could have definitely made a much bigger dent and not even been in relegation, in my opinion. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and the same can be said about the roster changes that you mentioned before. And I remember also I asked you a question in the first interview I had with you about the fact that Jackson was no longer team, because if people don't remember, Jackson was the head coach of you guys during the qualifier phase, and he helped you guys actually grab a spot in challengers. And so and before roughly a week before he was to compete in challengers alongside with you guys, he was signed by Ninjas in Pajamas in for their GC team. And it sort of gives sets the stage in a sense of what you guys were going to be experiencing poaching wise. And it's the name of the game, we understand that, but it does also add into the sort of I don't want to say instability, but yeah, it might be a way to describe that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we changed rosters 5 times. I mean, even if it's not what do you call it, poaching? There's obviously you're more prone to making changes, like cutting people, stuff like that. And just the team changing in general. There's nothing to hold the team together legally, right? So it's if people have issues, the changes are going to happen much quicker, and you're not going to see things through as much, and it is what it is. But the Jackson thing happening definitely was I mean, there's nothing holding us together. People are going to leave, they're going to leave. Definitely, you're right. Yeah, it was set the stage for what to expect.
And driving a little bit, or taking a little bit focus back within the early parts of that season, of that split, of that first split, you mentioned about the team basically being filled with 3 jet mains that all have to play in different roles. You said this in the interview, and you basically had to juggle through working out, okay, which person does which person does that, which person does this, despite it not being their natural roles. Except for you, because you were the duelist, and so you were the IGO as well, and so you kind of had to juggle within those 2 aspects. Not as hard per se, but still, nevertheless, it does have its own share of difficulties. And so, within the early part of that split, of course, you guys were struggling, losing going down maybe the first 2 games, if I believe, within that first split. And so that then led to the departure of Harmful and Okeanos, and then the arrival of mummAy and TiGG. And I want you to cover that sort of aspect when it came to that part of the season. What kind of obstacles did you see from that time that then necessitated a change such as that?
So, apart from their skill, there was definitely internal issues, which I don't think I'm going to say, but like all teams have, there are internal reasons and things outside of people's skill. Um, but I think it was more importantly we needed an actual IGL. I did it throughout the open qualifiers, but the caliber of teams in those matches were more puggy, more rankedy, more like you could just beat them with aim. But going into challengers when we played Shopify and FaZe, it was definitely a more like, yeah, we can't do this. Like we're not going to win this way, like how we did before. And it was kind of like we needed an IGL. I think we had the talent at that point, but we didn't have the brain is what we lacked. So immediately we looked at options like TiGG. I think we considered Precision, who was an IGL. I think he's playing on Krispy Kreme. He's doing pretty well actually. He just beat me in like some LAN. But he's a smart guy. But my point is, yeah, we needed a caller. And so we decided that it'll probably be better just to put me on duelist full time and just let me shoot back and not have to think. That way I can maximize my fullest potential. And then bring in like some experience, some veterans. So we got TiGG mummAy. mummAy's obviously he's an old guy, but he's got this experience. He's a veteran. TiGG, a natural caller. That guy I love playing with him. I think we beat him on the nation in the qualifiers, but that was a hard game for sure. I think we definitely won up a little bit of skill there, like talent wise, but bringing his like leadership was like crucial. Like not only did it make us better as a team, I think even after his departure, we learned a lot from him, and I definitely improved playing with him. I think all of Challengers was like kind of all of Challengers was a great experience for me because I got to play with 4 new people who have all like people that I would never have been able to play if I hadn't qualified for Challengers and gain experience from Rossy, dazzLe, mummAy, TiGG. I learned, and Wedid. Sorry, but I learned so much from these guys, in their experience, and I think all of Challengers was like a growing moment for me. And I think in those 6-8 months, I learned more than I have in the last 2.5 years previously, and it was definitely very good experience for me. Although we didn't win anything, but I think as a player, I learned a lot from there.
What
Got a
was
lot.
what was like one of the biggest things that your other teammates have shown to you that helped you to the greatest effect?
So overall, it's just like different ways to look at the game, and like for example, TiGG like had a lot of like TiGG was very professional in terms of how he directed practice. So something I learned from him was just like professionalism. I think he was very professional in terms of like his work ethic and all that. In terms of like actual game IQ stuff, like I think Rossy taught me a lot. I think going into practice, like the first 2 weeks, like of when we got Rossy and dazzLe, we just implemented conditioning, things like util timing, but mainly conditioning. The way like conditioning is very like important in Valorant in terms of um, like when you're trying to mask your opper, right? Let's say you're on Haven and you have your opper PK short, but the round before you stunned and smoked a lobby for him. The next time you do that, if you want to make it look like the opper is there, you could do the same util A and then put him C. Things like that is like. So he emphasized that a lot. Just as an example, like that's one thing that I mean, it's something I knew before, but the way he explained it and made us try to understand it, like it really got stuck in my brain after playing with him, and I understand the importance of it. But all of them taught me a little bit of everything, honestly. Like whether it's like the set plays or just playing with them the whole time and just seeing how they play situations, like I was very observant in terms of that. But it's hard to go over everything, but I definitely learned a lot.
And I guess by that sense, the perspective of those veteran teammates towards the game really didn't focus on the aiming aspect, but more of the tactical approach. Because like
Yeah.
it definitely differed how the team approached their matches like in the qualifying system, because you said that those matches were puggy in a sense, and so that kind of made it much forced you, I would say, to look at matches and look at certain comps and certain like movements in a different way, like in a different perspective, and like and it must have done so like in a very profound sense, right?
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think we switched a lot of our comps actually after like challengers were like, yeah, we can't do this. This isn't gonna work. I think we focused more on like comfortability as well, and like getting people in their right roles because like you said earlier, we had 3 jet mains and it was good for like I said, open qualifiers for like brawling and stuff, and just adding kids. But when you get into the higher tiers of Valorant, it's like you need you need a more tactical approach to it, and when people aren't comfortable on their own agents, like fully comfortable, then it's like that's an issue in itself. So we, focused on getting an IGL, getting people on the right roles, and then, thinking more about, how I want to play the game, like outside of just strat roulette, is because that's what we did. We did strat roulette. We would just, the way I called was I would just call like I would just change between like the same like 5-6 calls like every round. But it worked because we had really good aimers. But it's just not the right play to get it. It's not the right way to play the game when you get into teams like Shopify, FaZe, those types of teams.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned a little bit about how like the veteran players such as TiGG looked at the game in his way. Like, what kind of things did you observe outside of just the things that he showed to you, or he tried to explain to you? Besides that, what were some of the things that also assisted not just you but the team when it comes to competing in these matches um, against these tier 2 teams as the season progressed, from those like initial struggles and the initial phase of their joining the team?
Yeah. So our first practice with TiGG, I remember we just all hopped in a server. He shared a screen. He went map by map and kind of just explained his theory upon every map and like things he likes to do. For example, on Ascent, he basically emphasized the importance of like sequences, or intervals. So there's intervals like of initiator timings, like when you're on attack and the other team's on defense. KO's gonna knife aim. KO's gonna always knife something at the start of the round, right? And that's 45 seconds you don't have your knife. The next interval is like at a minute, basically, when he has his second knife, and he emphasizes the importance of like, okay, so it's important if we want to go A, but it's second interval coming up, we need to dodge the knife before we hit, things like that. And then on split, whenever split, he just went over like basic like kind of protocols, ways he likes to play the map, and things he thinks are bad, and he explained why they're bad, like rotating through heaven, when like rotating through B heaven as a CT when they're going B heaven. It's better to just go spawn and flood it there because you're gonna get stuffed. Just things like that. Like I said earlier, it's hard to go over all these things that they would explain, but these little, I think the two important ones are intervals, and conditioning. Like those are two things that we didn't really pay attention to in terms of like how you play challengers, because it's really hard to think about those things, especially when you're like playing as a duelist, because you're like focusing more on your own gameplay. But a true IGL is someone who thinks about all those things and like um calls beyond just intuition, right? You gotta actually think when you play, and when you're playing duelists like I was in calling, it's kind of impossible to do all those things and do it the right way.
Looking at the team's performance in their map pool, I think one of them stood out in the best way, and that is Fracture, in which you guys finished with a 6-2 record overall, winning the vast majority, or winning around 2/3 of all of your attack rounds, and then never having a losing record in the defensive rounds aspect. And so it stands out in the sense that you guys largely were able to win the majority of your matches within that map. And the same can be said for Lotus, because you guys were 3-0, which also speaks to the level that you guys have shown within those maps in particular, and also the improvement also from that initial iteration of the team being all basically a pug centric team. And so, what about those two maps, Fracture and Lotus, made it such a good map for you guys?
Yeah, so I think Fracture is probably a map where I actually think I understand it very well. It's a weird map where there's 4 lanes, but kind of the playstyle that we had, where we would be very aggro and just do team fights and just 4-man push things. That's like how you play Fracture. So it actually was a perfect map for us in the first place, and I understood it, like a lot better than other maps, because I just had a lot of reps on it at that point. But in the first place, I think I was a pretty good caller on Fracture, and it kind of carried us in challenges. We hard made sure that we played it every game, every series, and just got a free one. But going into challengers, we got really lucky in terms of the IGLs we chose. So TiGG, previously on Shopify Rebellion, they had a really good Fracture. They've actually always had a really good Fracture as well. And so TiGG, combination with us, like it was a natural fit for that map, just again being a very dominant map for us. But then going in, we replaced TiGG with dazzLe, Shopify. dazzLe also was a very good caller on Fracture, and we just got like 3 people who just understood Fracture pretty well, I think. Maybe not me, but as I played with them, I learned a lot more to the map other than just pops and stuff like that. But I think we played a total of like 4 different comps on that map too, and had success on all of them. But in every aspect, I think playing, like, I think we were just good on that map in terms of like who we chose, who we play with, comfortability. But if that makes sense, yeah, we just kind of got lucky with who we chose. They were already comfortable with the map, and so were we.
Mm-hmm. And what about Lotus? Because you guys were 3-0. Yeah. What about Lotus? What made that's just as well for you guys?
Yeah, so Lotus was a new map, I think, going into Challengers. I think it just came out during the season, but I think the reason why we were good at Lotus was because we put a lot of time when it came out, in terms of like watching how Loud played it, seeing how Cloud9 played it, seeing how Paper Rex played it. We were very observant. When I think it was Lock-In, they played it, right? Yeah. When the Lock-In teams played it for the first time during our season, we just spent a lot of time in the server going over how we want to play it. I think we tried even 3 different comps on it, but I think it came down to like work ethic. Because Lotus is a hard map for sure for any pug. Even I'm finding myself, in a new team playing Lotus, and it's, obviously very challenging. Like it's a challenging map. Any triple bomb site map, is a test of your fundamentals. So it's very hard to play it as a new team. So it takes a lot of time. I think the advantage that we had going in was like, yeah, this is a new map going into the season. We should get a head start and just get good at it. That way we have a map where it's like, we're always good at it, we're gonna win it, and it's like, like another Fracture. It's good to have another map in your pocket that's like, yeah, we're good at, like, this is our map, basically. You have to ban it against us, or you're gonna lose a map. Like you're gonna go down a map. But yeah, I also liked I think I don't know if we played the map with TiGG. I think it was only Rossy and dazzLe. I don't remember. But I just really do like the way dazzLe and Rossy both kind of called that map as well.
then looking at it on the other side of the coin, one of the maps that the team struggled in was Ascent, going 1-4. So,
That's like,
as much as I appreciate,
yeah.
giving your input as to why Fracture and Lotus were very good maps for you. What made Ascent difficult in that sense as well?
Honestly, Ascent is just like a cursed map, if I'm being honest. It's man. Okay, this is gonna sound dumb, but I think Ascent is just a bad map. I think it's a terrible map. Yeah, but, I don't know. The way you play it is very, simple. It's a very simple map. There's 3 lanes: A main, B main, and mid. Right? It's a very simple map, but for some reason, we always play that map in. We always ended up playing Ascent, like map 3, the decider. I think a lot of the times versus OXG and just like these really good Ascent teams. But yeah, it's a map where if you make any mistake, like or lose any timing, just the smallest thing can fucking make you lose a round. Whereas like
Yeah.
Lotus and Haven, you can actually close out a lot of rounds, like 2v4, like these weird situations. Like it's such a big map where you can make plays. Ascent is like especially so CT side is something we're always good. T side is something we always struggled because I think it's a map where even the smallest mistakes or like losses of timings can get you killed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one, we never really we didn't dry run along that map, especially our defaults. Like we didn't get things down properly, or I think we kind of always just had it. Like we always we didn't focus too much on the map, honestly, in terms of like dry running and set util and all that. But it definitely cost us because I think like I said, we played along our deciders, and those small mistakes. Obviously, it's things are tense in those moments. Like things happen. I know that I lost. I try not to think about those kind of losses because they do feel bad a lot. But if I do remember correctly, I know a lot of our T sides came down to like just small we made small mistakes and then we lose bonus because of it, and then it snowballs. Like things can snowball really hard on that map. That's basically like I think every time it just came out of that, we got snowballed on.
Yeah, but even so, you guys were able to overcome those difficulties and actually maintain the spot in the challengers level. You mentioned a little bit in your previous answers about comparing playing with Rossy and dazzLe later on in the season, and so that kind of made that. I want to touch upon that in particular. What with um, mummAy and TiGG signing with FaZe Clan shortly after Split 1, and then you guys having to look for new options, new players to fill the void, which then led to Rossy and dazzLe. And so what made them the next set of players to play within this team for you?
They were just on paper the best options at the time. I think dazzLe was like the only available IGL at the time, like that had experience that was similar to like TiGG's level. And then so he was a no-brainer in terms of like we need an IGL. And then Rossy was also like I think it was between Rossy and Exalt for a Flash Initiator. But now that I've played with Rossy, I don't regret it. Right? I think he's because I had no impression of Rossy, if I'm being honest. I didn't know too much about him. I never played with him, but after playing with him, don't regret it at all. I think we just naturally clicked that team. Like it's very rare where you have 5 people where you just click and everything goes well, and it's like you just start off owning. Like having honey, like it's common where you get on a new team and you have like a honeymoon phase, but I feel like that just means like if you have a honeymoon phase and you have what we had on that team, like you need to at that point just do everything you can to keep it. It's like that is rare. It really is. And you know, yeah, going back to your question, why they were the first picks was just like, yeah, they were just like the best options at that time. But we didn't really do a trial period because after like the first day or two we played with them, we were just like it clicked so well, so we didn't even like bother trialing other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just that sort of instant connection that you felt that made it a no-brainer in that sense to opt for them. I also want to touch upon the head coach because after Jackson's departure, you guys brought in Avhyno. I'm not sure if that's the right way to pronounce his name, but
Yeah,
Avhyno, yeah. And so Avhyno left 1 month in, and then there was a period of 3 months in which you guys had no coach, but you guys, were sort of trading with yourself, with amongst yourselves, with, as you mentioned, the tactical explanations and the tactical reviews with like mummAy and TiGG, and him showing you guys, and then before the start of Split 2, you guys brought in CurryShot, and so how did the team go about going from Avhyno to then having CurryShot as the coach, and also what was the difference in having those two at that position?
Okay, so Avhyno brought in a lot of structure, I guess. So we didn't actually have Avhyno when we had TiGG and mummAy. We had Avhyno up until they joined, basically, and it was basically Harmful and Okeanos still that we had Avhyno with. I think it came down to we just played with Avhyno for 2 months, like the first 2 games of Challengers. We didn't, and we didn't really see much like, we lost. We got shit on first 2 games. And then I think Avhyno had an offer from FaZe. But what Avhyno tried to bring to our team was like more structure, and he tried to make, us do things more together and like have more of a better game plan. But it just with the players we had at the time, it just didn't work. Like we have people that aren't comfortable in their own roles, so it was kind of an issue there. But yeah, so Avhyno ended up actually just taking an offer from FaZe as an analyst, and good for him. Like I said, and you should take any offer you get, right? Especially if there's things are looking grim for like the situation you're in. Like I'll tell anybody that like if you're at the end of the day in esports, like you should always seek a better opportunity for yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, once again, it was FaZe though. Once again, FaZe.
Yeah. But then we got CurryShot. CurryShot was more of like a vibes coach, I feel like. And then he like got pistols for us, but I think what we wanted it for in a coach with TiGG and Mum, or was it TiGG and mummAy? I don't even know. No, we got CurryShot when we had Rossy and dazzLe. Is what when we had Rossy and dazzLe, we had CurryShot. I think dazzLe just wanted someone to make strats, like pistol strats, and then direct practice a little bit. But it definitely just helps, having another person on board, just to do things, it alleviates the workload, right? So the biggest difference between CurryShot and Avhyno was trying to implement structure in a team where, we're a little bit more hectic, we have a little bit more experience, so it was kind of just didn't work. You might have worked with, the current team we had, I guess, but I think CurryShot, I think immediately we kind of just said, yeah, what we wanted a coach is we just want someone to bring in like small things like pistols, maybe a little like micro, this is small, plays here and there. I think overall game plan though, like that was more focused like on the IGL. I think dazzLe, kind of carried that role. And then ultimately we decided like we don't even want a coach. And then I think we, part of it is a CurryShot. And another month later, we like changed our mind. We got daddLe. But I think ultimately a coach is just good for like my biggest takeaway with coaches is just good for like team culture and implement like just directing practice and having focuses on what we should work on. But it is important for sure. Just having more people on deck. At the end of the day, like the coach and the IGL should be on the same page, and if they're not, then there's going to be issues because like those are the two people that like control, what your actual game plan is. But yeah, that answered it.
And so, in that sense, as you mentioned, CurryShot was the vibes coach, just focusing on the synergy of the team and also like making sure that everyone is on the same page. So, with him being on that front, then I guess the actual head coach and just actually like devising the strategies and all of that heavy business, that was from people like dazzLe and Rossy or any other members within the team.
I'm sorry.
So like when it comes to, so since you mentioned that CurryShot was basically the vibes coach and just in charge of
In terms of tactics, it
Yeah.
was mainly it was Rossy dazzLe, but they would go and call and talk about what they want to do with the game for sure. I think they would work together is what it was. They worked together on that stuff, but in game, like during practice, I think Rossy and dazzLe are definitely way more vocal in terms of like. Then that's how it should be. Like the coach should focus on stuff like during server and like in between practice and like bring stuff. And that's what it was. And it was a good system that we had. It was okay. I liked it.
What kind of input did Wedid and Add3r provide to like the tactics and the strategy making? Because of course, it's understandable that people, although they're not within the team for a long time, if they have good knowledge and a good mind of the game, and they can provide, they could get into that role as being like the forefront of the team strategy making. But from how you've been describing the team's makeup, it sort of makes an interesting aspect to see that we did an Add3r, despite being the OG members of the team, didn't provide as much input in that. Am I right to assume that? So like, what was that aspect like from you guys?
Like, don't get me wrong, we definitely like. There's no me and team. There's no I and team, right? We all there's a me and team actually. I mean, but there's no I in team. I think we all provide input. For example, like if there's some set play we're doing and I'm dashing in and I don't like that Matt is flashing right side instead of left side, I'll tell him that. Like we all give input in terms of that. Like in terms of our own gameplay, like everyone has a say. I know Jack has brought up multiple times. How he wants to lurk on the other side of the map and like when he wants to go. Matt definitely provides a lot. I know I'm making it seem like the IGLs kind of just came in and told us how to play the game and did everything, but don't get me wrong, everyone had their input for sure. And we all brought our own stuff to the practice as well, things we want to try. Obviously the IGL was more, the IGLs brought more because they are the callers, like that's how it should be. But I don't kind of want to give off the impression that we did nothing. No, we definitely had input for sure.
How did you view Add3r Wedid's progression also simultaneously, as we've been discussing all of the ins and outs of the team throughout this conversation? So how did you view their progression in particular, if you're able to disclose as such?
Add3r became, at the beginning of Turtle Troop, was a very quiet person. Towards the end on that team, he became way more vocal and kind of expressed himself a lot more in terms of, hey, I don't like this, or hey, I like this. So that's one thing. He developed a lot. I played him for a while, and that's the biggest thing I noticed. He's more vocal. Wedid throughout the season just got way more confident. Like he just became a fragger. Definitely already was smart. I looked up to him. He had a lot of experience before. But one thing I noticed throughout the season was he just became very confident. And I like that. That's good. I think at the beginning, like I think when we first picked him up, he was used to losing for a while. We took him from Squirrel Warriors. Everyone on the team, they're cool dudes. No offense, though. They sucked. We took Wedid though from that team, and we turned him from a loser to he started winning again, and then he found joy in that. And I like that. I do like that he became a more confident player. He started buying the Vandal. He's a Vandal player now. He was a Vandal player before. If that's the best way to summarize it. He buys a Vandal now. Like he just taps heads. Also, just in terms of, like I said, game IQ, we played with two different duos of experience. Rossy, dazzLe, TiGG, mummAy. We learned a lot in terms of them, but just like off personality, development. Add3r, became way more vocal. Became more confident as a player, and I love that for both of them.
And in being a part of various iterations within Turtle Troop, so like from open qualifying phase to split 1, and now split 2, and then maybe sort of the end of your stint with Turtle Troop. How would you compare all of those different versions that you would say that you've been a part of, and also which do you think is the best team that you feel you saw, like the best version of the team that you saw?
It was dazzLe and Rossy, just to say that was the best iteration for sure. But that could be biased because it was the end of it, and if you put Squirtle Squad, Governor, Add3r, and Wedid like before during open qualifiers. If you put those players with Rossy and dazzLe, we might have been shit. But that team at the end definitely was like we just got better and better. That definitely was the best iteration. In terms of comparing them, I would say, we just got better. Like open qualifiers, you could say we were just a couple of loose cannons outside of like Wedid, who had a lot of experience. We were a couple of loose cannons, just aim dueling people. We made it through open qualifiers and got stomped. And then we pick up some experience like TiGG and mummAy, and then we implement structure, and we implement more tactical. We play the game more tactically. Then we get Rossy and dazzLe, and we use what we learned from TiGG and mummAy, and we kind of just we use what we learned from them, and then we kind of just had our own little playstyle there. I think. With Rossy and dazzLe, I definitely got pocketed a lot more. I think the game was more focused on around me with that team, so I definitely like that. Like Rossy would buy me a Vandal round 2 every round, and then you would buy me a pistol, and I'd have like frenzy armor every round on pistol, and then I'd have an op round 3, and then everything would be for me on that team, and that was like the identity we had on that team. And then with TiGG and mummAy, it was like we kind of just. We're implementing the tactical part, and we're just playing more smart as a team. But that was still good. I think it was during Sky Harbor meta, and I think we had like the right players for that team at then, so it was like very fun with them. The game changed as the season went along and as the rosters changed, so it's hard to make those full comparisons. But like I said, I think if you put old me, Wedid, and Add3r with Rossy and dazzLe, it wouldn't be the same. I think overall we just got better as the season went. That's like the main takeaway.
It's an interesting perspective and an interesting answer that you gave out, given the importance of being able to have that experience and having the seasoning of playing those matches and going through the year and improving along the way, and also it sort of brings up my curiosity on your perspective as to how much you've grown with Turtle Troop with respect or compared to how you played before that team, i.e. competing in tier 2, competing in complexity, early stages of your year. And so how much of a difference did you see your level of play improve this year compared to the past, like when, as in when you were in complexity and those other teams? How much of a difference did you see within your personal improvement?
Big difference. The experience definitely helped, just playing, like seeing the game a different way, seeing how it's played at the highest level, basically. Um, Having better teammates around me, because those are probably the best teammates I've had up until that point. So definitely having, a really good flash initiator, for me as a duelist, having a good caller, being put in the right place, always, like, now that I have been, taught that and been put in the right spot so many times by my caller, like, I definitely now have learned from that and know, what to do, and like now, and I'm now going to bring that to my other teams now, and like, and how I want to play the game, and what I think is important. For one, like, the conditioning thing is so important for a duelist, because when you mask the opper, your opper is going to get more value. Whereas if you're doing the same thing every time, you're just going to get, avoided. They're going to know where you are. You're just not going to get a lot of action. So in general, the biggest difference is I got a lot of experience in terms of callers and game IQ and how to play the game. Mechanically, I was definitely a way better player before, because I would not think. I wouldn't think when I played, and it's very easy to shoot back when you're just not thinking. But I do think a lot more when I play, which is good. And I previously, I think people thought I was a pretty dumb player, especially on complexity, which I was. I played Silva like a duelist on that team, so it was. I had a pretty bad rep for that, but I think now I can confidently say, I know how to play the game. I learned a lot, and it was, like I said, all of Challengers was just a great opportunity for me to play with so many different players and have different perspectives and learn. And I watched a lot of gameplay as well during that time, like seeing other teams play, even playing against the other teams. It was a great learning experience. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, I got smarter just playing, and that's, I think everybody on Turtle Troop did, like we did in Add3r.
Mhm. Yeah, you certainly did. And diving a little bit into the complexity, it's an interesting time frame for you, because you were already in tier 2, but you were trying to make your way fighting into tier 1. Obviously, with respect to open qualifiers and challenger scene before it became to this current format. Um, and you mentioned about how you were surrounded by not a pretty good team. So how do you look at your time with complexity, with all of the struggles that you've seen? What's the biggest struggle that you experienced? Because was that due to the fact that you didn't really have a good team surrounding you, or was it all what, or was there a part in just you not being as good of a player as you are right now? So like, how do you view that?
Yeah, so on complexity, I felt like I wasn't on the right role. They picked me up for Sova. I think the biggest issue with that team was um, we had some conflicting roles in terms of like they picked me up for Sova, but I should have been playing duelist. Like Sova's and I was pretty inexperienced too. Um, so I think while I was learning how to play the game and learning how to compete in tier 1, I think playing Sova for was not very good for me. I don't think I learned a lot from that team either. No offense. It's like 3 years later. I hope they don't get mad at me, but the team was just not great. Looking back on how we operated and handled practice and scrimmed, like it, when we would scrim on that team, like we would scrim with no goal. I felt like, and we didn't really adapt. I noticed, like looking back on defense, we ran the same setup like 12 rounds on the half, and it was just like, come on. Yeah, it was not tier 1 gameplay on that team for sure. But Wake Up Call was definitely my next team. I played nearest airport with Frost, the ex 100 Thieves coach, who's my coach now. I played under him for 6 months, and I learned a lot more fundamental stuff, which was and I got to play duelist, which is my natural role. But I think the main takeaway from complexity is I don't know why they put me on Sova. I think that was pretty troll. But then again, no one else on the team played Sova, so there's nothing I could do about it until the end, where they eventually put me on Sova or on Jet, but it was kind of too late, and it was just too late. But yeah, that was kind of a nightmare looking back. But I mean, it was my first in terms of when I learned learning how to be a professional. It was cool because we went to boot camp, having a coach and having a routine and stuff like that, and having mandatory stuff. Yeah, I definitely learned a little bit more professionalism on the team. But in terms of the game, I think we were pretty far behind looking back in terms of what other people were doing.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel, looking back at your time in complexity, with all of the struggles that you and the team experienced in 2022, do you feel that affected fans and players and the public's in general's perception as to how you are as a player? Because if they've seen you only play as Soba and they see you struggle, then they must have thought so yeah.
No, I was that really hurt my career and my reputation, which is fair. When you do duelist things on Sova, you're gonna look like an idiot. When you're doing duelist things on duelist, you're gonna look like a duelist. It's fine, but that just made me look like. Well, I mean, I want to say it made me look dumb, but to be fair, it was pretty dumb. I only learned Sova because I wanted to I was I know that I only started learning Sova because I knew at the time it was a desired agent, a desired role that people needed. A lot of people needed a Sova at the time, so I learned it for a few months, and then I ended up playing it. But I think overall I belong on Duelist, or at this point I could play Flash Initiator, Sky Chaos, stuff like that. But at the time when I was previously just playing Jet and ranked, and just that's how I got my name out in the first place. Me playing Sova and just doing dumb things definitely pissed a lot of people off in the pro scene, and I got a pretty bad rep from that. But I think now I'm in a good spot where I overcame that, and because I had to start fresh, right? At that point, before open qualifiers, I had limited options, and I just played with some friends, Okeanos, Harmful, Wedid, and Add3r. So my options were limited at the time, and I had to play with that team, but that team ended up being fucking good, so whatever. But it's nice that I had the chance to, although I didn't at that point I stopped getting opportunities because who I was. But now that I've kind of been through all that again and kind of reproven myself on the duelist role, I think the stuff from complexity has at least kind of gone away. There's probably some pros that still kind of think I'm an idiot, but I've been competing at a point long enough where I don't really care what other people think about me. And I feel like I've matured past that. People can think what they want, but I know for me, I've seen improvement, and that's all that matters. I feel like, and my confidence is there, at least.
Yeah, of course, and it sort of brings about a full circle moment because you mentioned about how you were picked up by nearest airport and Frost as the coach, and it's interesting to say that for you to say that because Frost is the head coach of Talon right now, and so but before we get into the now of that relationship, I want to go back to the before and when Frost picked you up for nearest airport shortly after you left complexity. What did he see you, or what did he see in you as a player that you felt you didn't have, or maybe you realized you didn't see in yourself at that moment in time?
Frost wanted to cut me, actually.
Oh shoot!
Frost didn't like me the first week I was on the team because I was an idiot. I mean, I was. And he wanted to cut me, but everyone on the team like vouched for me. It's like, no, he's good, he's good. But what he told me later on was after like the first week, from there on, like he said that I improved a lot, and I like was a quick learner, and I like fixed my mistakes pretty quick, and I I was a good listener. I think I was just when I was on a team, I had a lot of respect for just everybody there, and I just did like I absorbed a lot. Like I just really tried absorbing everything and just like taking it as a learning opportunity. And I learned pretty quick, and I think that's what he saw in me, that I was just a quick learner and I was quick to adapt, and follow through with everything that I was told.
Mm-hmm. And God damn, what I can only imagine what maybe your career would have been at. Frost just went ahead and cut you after that first weekend in near Surfboard. Just it does make you think about like the what ifs aspect in that regard.
Yeah, it was a canon event. It was definitely had that happened, it would have changed a lot. I think even like there are tons of things that were choices that I made that could have affected my career for sure in big ways. Like I think even the way I got into Valorant was pretty crazy. The way I got into Valorant was I was playing CS:GO with just like my silver two, like I was smurfing with my silver two friends, just playing. They're like, "Hey, Valorant came out. You want to play Valorant with us?" And I'm like, "Nah, fuck that game. I play CS." I was like, "Fuck it." And because of our friend group, I just played Valorant. I mean, oh man, no, but there definitely are tons of things that make me question, what if this didn't happen? What if this did happen? My career could have gone so different ways. What if I got to play Duelist for Complexity? Who knows? What if I got to play Chamber when Chamber was, in meta? Who knows?
What if you didn't play solo and Complexity also? Like, yeah.
Yeah. What if I played Duelist? That's what I mean. Yeah. Who knows?
Would you say that Frost not cutting you in Northeast nearest airport, would you say that's the biggest canon event in your career?
It's one of them. I don't know. I've done a lot of things. Like I almost didn't compete. Like I almost just like did content completely because I was a content creator before, but I was like, I like left BBG. And I was making a good chunk of change doing streaming and just content and just being on that org. And I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm throwing it all, not throwing it all away, but I'm trading it in all for Complexity and taking this leap. But I think that was probably my biggest can event, because there's a chance that I didn't even do competing, if I'm being honest. But ultimately, I don't regret it because I love this shit.
Yeah, and even so, like you were already a pretty good content creator in your own right. I think you already had like 100K subscribers or around that number. Yeah,
I had like 100K, and like I was averaging like 1,500 on Twitch. I was in a good spot.
Yeah, and if I would have been in your shoes and I had to look at my options and maybe say like, okay, I could go here and do streaming and just make and in doing so I can have like a sustainable amount of income and I can rest easy, rest on my laurels, or I can just go do pro gaming and pursue my actual aspirations. And even though there's risks attached to it, and I might not get into a tier 1 team or much less a tier 2 team, since there's the whole streamer thing and whether they can compete in pro matches, I'd go with the streamer avenue. And it does speak to the level of dedication and improvement that you have shown within that regard, Governor. It really does. It really does come into emphasis your growth on an individual sense as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I want to then touch upon one of the biggest aspects concerning Turtle Troop, going back a little bit into that team. I mentioned earlier on in this entire conversation, but you guys experienced not just within the server, but also outside of the server, as opposed to like finding a new home and finding an org. And it's been reported quite a few times throughout the year. And if you're able to talk about that, how that came about, then go ahead. If not, then I understand. But there was times in which you guys were in discussions with certain orgs, Moist Esports and then xQc, that sort of thing. And so going into that, like, how difficult or what was the climate like when it comes to you guys looking for an org and having them sponsor you throughout the season as it went along?
So I don't want to talk too much about the xQc thing, mainly because I think the whole thing is stupid, and I don't want to get, what do you call it? Like, that guy has a lot of diehard fans, and I already considered talking about that, but it's just not worth it. Like, it is what it is. I'm just gonna let it go. But yeah, we were close to signing with him, and it just fell through. And I think that was the only time that we actually had an org. I don't think we actually were talking to Moist. But in terms of the climate and how we wanted to find a home, that was the whole season. We spent the whole season with every iteration reaching out to Dignitas, FlyQuest, Space Station, all these orgs. Like, we were constantly searching, but I gotta sneeze. I think a misconception that people had was that we were asking for a ridiculous amount of money and too many orgs, and like we just denied a lot of orgs. But that wasn't the case at all. We had one official offer, and that was from xQc, and then it fell through, like I said. But we didn't even have like those like Mickey Mouse orgs for $500 a month. We didn't even have those. I think the thing was the orgs that were too good were like, nah, we've puck challengers, esports drought. And then the orgs that were like those types of $500 orgs were like, they're not gonna respond to us anyway, whatever. But we had nothing. No one offered us anything. But we were searching the whole time. I think immediately I want to make that known. Like, we're not ignoring organizations. We were responding to calls left and right, and they would just be like, okay, no, we're good. But yeah. I mean, we only had, and like the only orgs that we talked to were like, I think we were talking to FlyQuest for a bit, but they were like on and off. They were like on and off with us, and like they ended up egoing us. We're talking to DSG as well, after relegation, but I think I don't want to leak this actually. Yeah, no, that one fell through too though, but I think he just wants to do other stuff.
Yeah, it does sort of brings a sense of surprise as to it going, or the discussions with those orgs ending in that fashion each time. It does also brings about a sense of frustration also on your end, I can assume, of course. And it does also bring, as I said, a surprise as to the fact that nothing would really emerge from that initial discussion phase and get into like a concrete sort of signing final phase to the level as to where the whole negotiations happen with the xQc thing. Why do you think those orgs that you mentioned didn't want to sign Turtle Troop and get into Valorant and get into the tier 2 scene?
It's just not profitable. Like, there's no point. I think the reason why these other orgs in the first place like signed Moist and signed OR and Mad Lions was because it's the beginning, and they saw potential in them. But as the season actually started, it was very clear that it was going to be M80 or Guard winning the whole thing. And if you're not winning the whole thing, it just isn't profitable. So I think that's why these orgs didn't want to get in. It's just, I think esports is really inflated because of COVID. There are all these orgs. Like, those challengers are like the remnants, but I think even after this year, there's not going to be that many organizations. There's going to be like 6 for Asian teams, I'd imagine. going into this year. Like it's going to be way more than just us, or that was us. But it's just, yeah, like I said, it's just if you're not winning the whole thing, there's no point for these orgs to like. There's no incentive for them to get in.
Yeah, and it's also an interesting point that you brought up, the fact that all of these other orgs are dropped their teams shortly after the end of the Challenger season. TSM, FaZe, Moist, and Shopify combined to form one unit, and then Turtle Troop is still going to be there, of course. Mad Lions, the guard,
Mad Lions.
Yeah, they're dropped, right? Oh yeah. They were relegated. My bad. OR Esports. I was thinking of them. The guard became G2, so
it'll be OR, OG, Moist, Shopify, M80, and I think that's it in terms of signed teams.
Yeah, and so it does really speak to the level of which Challengers is currently is at, and about Tier 2 in Challengers and the Challengers level, as someone who has competed and went through, I would say, the difficult part of the Challenger scene, from the bottom, free agent team, all of that jazz. What do you think is the biggest issues that surrounded Tier 2 NA Challengers for this year?
Nepotism is the biggest thing. I think the biggest problem with challengers, like, what do you mean by problem? Do you mean like why? I think the talent is all there. Okay, I'll like try to answer your question. I think the talent is all in challengers. Like NA has so much talent. The problem with like the biggest problem, at least like being a player in NA Tier 2, is like a lot of people go off of reputation a lot. Like people don't actually like give people chances, and they don't give people like they don't overlook. Like if someone calls me a fucking idiot, like, hey, this guy's fucking stupid, he used to do this and ranked, like, about he typed this to me or something, like they're just not gonna trial me. I think that's like a huge problem, especially if you're like actually the next up and comer, like with 400 followers on Twitter and no one really knows who you are, but you're just insane. But you'll never get a chance because you overpeaked this guy in ranked and he called you stupid fuck and you shot his body. Then done. You do that, you're done. Too much of that in politics in Tier 2, and it's a big reason why I wanted to get out. And like why I was okay with going APAC, because it's just too much drama, man. NA is like everyone is so good, but people just like live off of that like reputation, just putting other people down, I feel like. But at the end of the day, like we're all fighting for the same thing, But
would you say that sort of sentiment has always been within the NA Valorant scene, like Tier 2 wise? Because like at the early stages of the game, you had the ex-CSGO players coming in, and also all the other esports title come in, build a career there, and then they would be like the first people that would be considered for a pro org team. Yeah,
I think it's because in NA, most teams are operated by the players, and the players have a lot more say. But something I've noticed in APAC is in APAC, they have management has more say in terms of like who they want to trial and who they want to give opportunities to. It's not really up to the players so much in this region, I believe. But in NA, it's like all about the players, and like when it's all about the players controlling the roster, then you have people making decisions that will save themselves and provide longevity to themselves, and it's like you're not really thinking about the team, you're thinking about yourself. I think it's always been a thing in North America, but I haven't competed in enough esports outside of Valorant to like, talk about this too much. But that's just like one thing I've noticed, being somebody that has, that I feel like I'm good enough, but a lot of people just, what in the past have just overlooked me because, what I've done, not what I've done, but, who I've played for and who I've lost to, and, the roles I played, but yeah.
Even so, with the progression of the scene now going to a state in which we're now seeing players that are starting their careers in Valorant only, as opposed to those that started their careers in other games. Do you sense that there has been a little change within this whole sort of nepotistic department
Yeah,
that
I
you've been
think
describing?
yeah, so I think now it's better for sure. Like people are getting more opportunities. Like look, especially like look at a player like Jakey who came out of collegiate, did well, and then you have Demon One who like was just a ranked demon. I get it, but ranked demon, and then like now he's world champion. I think now it's probably a little better, but it definitely is still there. Um, and it's something that probably won't go away if I'm being honest. But I think my biggest advice to people, if they will listen to this advice, is never like take everything you hear about people with a grain of salt. Like, if you hear someone's this done, like this guy sucks, this guy's like take everything with a grain of salt until you actually played with that player. I think that's what people need to realize. Like you can't go off of everyone's just word, no matter like you gotta actually see things through for yourself before you form an opinion. Yeah, that's my biggest advice. Like form an opinion for yourself. Like fuck other people's like what they say. If I'm being honest.
And it really does help because it does make it all the more true because you were almost going to be a victim of those sort of initial sort of like how do I describe it, like a victim of those initial like first impressions, it being negative, and then teams not wanting to play with you as a result of that, that sort of thing. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I've made the mistake myself of calling people bad and thinking they're bad and listening to people and taking their advice. But after like at this point in my time, I like have learned, yeah, fuck what other people think. Like when I played with when I played with Wedid, for example, I heard so many bad things about Wedid. But like, dude, he's so good. Like this guy's so good, man. Like, oh my god, this guy should literally be in tier 1. I think he 100% deserves it. He hasn't even had any trials, which I think is absurd. Like, he had a killer year in challengers, and not one team would trial him because of his reputation. And that just makes me so sad, man. But like, yeah, I think people really do need to start just like, because people can get better too, Like, give it like, man, a year ago I was so bad. Like I watched my old VODs like a year and a half ago. I was so bad, but like I think I've improved so much in a year. And you gotta understand like how much time a fucking year is. Like that, especially if someone's young, you will learn. You can learn so much in such a short amount of time, given the work ethic of a person. Like I don't even think like what do you call it? My work ethic was like that exceptionally high, but like just the people that I played with, and like what I've learned in just like a full year. Like, dude, there's people like, for example, I'm ranting because of Wedid. Like, this guy had a bad rep 2 years ago, but now it's 2 years later and he still has a bad rep. It's like, bro, what the hell? But
I mean,
yeah,
some people. I mean, some people can't escape their past. I guess something like that or something.
yeah.
I think you mentioned about Add3r not having a trial for tier 1, which is unfortunate, obviously. Oh no, we did.
Yeah,
My bad. I wanted to segue into Add3r because there was also a reports about him getting trials from tier 1 teams.
brother.
Yes, that's what I got from like tweets and reports and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I just want to know, like, from your lens, if you do know, then like how was that aspect of Add3r getting trials? If you do know, then if you don't know, then I understand.
He had a trial. Yeah, he had a trial for tier 1 team in NA, but it's not mine to say or my place to talk about it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I understand.